Hi, and welcome to this installment of Frank and Mary here in Westboro. If you haven't seen this show before, my name is Art Bergeron. My day job is as an elder law attorney at Myrick O'Connell, which is actually right here in Westboro. There are like actually 20 of us here. But this is not about my day job. This is about my friends Frank and Mary, whose goal in life is very simple. They want to live in their house until they die and be buried in the backyard. And if that's Westboro, that means right here. They don't want to move to San Diego with their kids. They don't want to go to Marlboro with their friends. They like it right here. So the point is, if you're like Frank and Mary, who do you need to know and what do you need to know about? What programs, what things, in order to live a happy remaining life right here in Westboro? So a few people know me. Everybody seems to know my friend Shelby Marshall, a veteran on the Board of Selectmen now, who's been serving in her second term, who brings on these great guests. And this time she even brought on the competition. She brought on a new person to the Board of Selectmen, and we're gonna talk to him about kind of what he wants to do. So Shelby, whom do we have on today?
Yeah, hi Arthur, it's great to see you, and I'm excited that Patrick Welch, who is now a member of the Select Board, as you mentioned, has agreed to join us. Patrick won the most recent election for a one-year term. Typically our terms are 3 years, but Patrick bravely stepped up to fill in some really big shoes of a little person, a lot of tenure in this town, Leigh Emery. And so Patrick is no stranger to Westboro. He's been here all of his life, it seems. He'll give us a brief intro, and then Arthur, we've agreed to make this be a little spicy and be a hardball interview. We don't usually do this on Frank and Mary, but only for Patrick.
That's right. So I'm supposed to ask these really tough questions, and you're supposed to say, "Oh, Arthur, come on, ease up a little bit." So anyway, Patrick. Yeah,
Patrick, tell us about you.
Yeah, tell us about you. I know that you've just tired of doing this because you just ran for selection, so you had to go do this 1,000 times. But that said, kind of how did you get here? Why are you doing this? All of that stuff.
Yeah, well, first of all, certainly thank you for having me on the show. It's a great opportunity to talk to y'all and get out there in the community. So yeah, longtime resident, as Shelby indicated, of Westboro. I've lived here for just hit 38 years. Graduated Westboro High School. My 3 children went through the high school. I have a large amount of relations in town. As a matter of fact, my in-laws are Frank and Mary. They actually their house borders on one of the graveyards in town. I always joke to them that they might consider just put them down in the backyard.
So it is their backyard.
It is their backyard.
That's
yep.
Great.
We're going to have a show on that to determine if that's allowed by zoning or whatever, but that's a different show.
There you go. So yeah, I've worked for. Let's see. When I first moved to Westboro, I worked for a number of different small businesses, including at the Willows of Westboro for a number of years. Then worked for a couple of other small companies in town, and eventually ended up working for EMC for my first 16 years or so. And then with the acquisition of EMC by Dell, I'm now a Dell employee. And my role in that company is a nice fit, I think, into our town because I deal a lot with policies, procedures. I'm a program manager by trade, so I work a lot on projects. I work a lot on cross-matrix teams, and a lot of challenging things that we deal with in the private sector, I think, do translate nicely over into the public sector. I'll also mention I have a couple of grandchildren now, 2 granddaughters who live in the area. And I ran for a couple of reasons, but I think the primary reason, as I was talking to my wife about running, was really that there was an opportunity for me to provide some positive influence in our community, to bring a perspective, I think, that bridges a lot of different, I'll say age gap, age differences, a lot of different ethnicities. I mentor a family here in town, a minority family here in town. So I have a lot of connections with the community, and so does my wife. And it was a really good opportunity for me, I think, to get out there. And the time was right. I'm at the point in my career where I can give more back to the community. And this was a really great opportunity to do that.
And so for a lot of those voters, this may be the first time that they really saw you without a mask. This is a big deal. Oh my God, we elected him, right?
Now they know who I am.
I know him.
I'm in trouble
That's
now.
the guy. So Patrick, one of the things that I think it's really important, and I know we talk about this, we talked about it, when you consider running, is how important, you sort of touched on this, how important it is that people in the community step up. But if you could, first impressions, this is a tell-all kind of show. People want juicy stuff. So no, but what's your first impression? What has it been like to, be a selectman? And how does that translate as you talk with people in the community and they consider, I thought about joining a committee or running for office, but what's it really like? So
Especially talk about Shelby. I mean, the real story, I don't know the real, I've never seen the back of Shelby, only the front of Shelby,
We won't use names. I'll just point. Okay. How's that? Yeah, no, it's definitely been a very interesting curve here for me to learn, right? So fairly long time participant in annual town meeting and certainly have listened into a number of different boards over the years and tried to participate where I could. I think one of the things that I really, a couple of big takeaways that I learned was the amount of work that both the town and the residents do. And just thinking about it, it's almost a 50-50 split from my vantage point between town departments and volunteers from the community that are really, really running this town and making really positive change for our community. So it's great to see those connections, but I would encourage people to certainly get out and get involved because, and get involved early. I in the beginning, when I was attending town meeting, I would join, I would hear an issue, I'd see the warrant probably for the first time at town meeting. And, of course, you have 100 questions about every article that comes up. That's good. But the best thing to do is really to get involved earlier so you can understand what the thought process was to get to that point of the article, the way it was being presented to the town. So that's been a really tremendous learning curve as to how to do that. I would say the other thing is really building those relationships. For those that aren't familiar with open meeting laws, it's an interesting dynamic. And I'll just give you a little bit of a personal anecdote. I work with a gentleman whose wife actually ran for US State Senate in Congress. And I talked to him, he's from another state, and I talked to him about our form of politics here, our form of government. And he was absolutely amazed by the way we operate the town and what it meant to be a select board member and how we work together as one executive board to make the changes that we need in the community. So those are kind of my biggest observations. So get involved early, and be passionate and persistent on things that are important to you.
That's a good sign.
Yeah, and I will say sometimes I see the gift of open meeting laws, right? I understand at least I try to understand the intent of the transparency of it. But man, sometimes is it frustrating, right? Because particularly when it's hard sometimes to present in public, right? And you have just a moment. Sometimes I'm long on the word. And you can't really build consensus outside of the meeting because you can build it with one person maybe, but you can't build it with a quorum. So it's a very interesting dynamic. And we have a lot of authority in town, right, as the highest executive office, but we don't have all the authority.
Right.
And I don't know if, Patrick, you've found situations where there is this tension there that exists, and that's why I think good relationships really matter and carry forth, but
Yeah.
It's not always easy.
Yeah, I would say I between boards, I've been really impressed with the level of communication between the boards. Obviously, only been in this position for a few months, but from what I've seen, and I've only sat in as a liaison on a couple of other board meetings so far, but I find the conversation to be good, positive, constructive conversations between the boards. And in the time of COVID, I mean, that's just so important that we operate as a well-functioning, town governing body. So I am encouraged by that. And just another thought on what you're talking about there, Shelby. I don't think I've come out of a select board meeting yet thinking that I didn't miss saying something. Like, every meeting I say, I should have said that a different way, or I should have said that, I forgot to say this thing. So I'm certainly learning that in my preparation. I think one of the other observations, Shelby, I know you're familiar with this, but the volume of work and content that we get presented on a bi-weekly basis, the packet of information, I think the smallest one I've seen so far was just around 100 pages, but it was upwards of over 600 pages of content. And that's not that you have to read every word of it, but it's still a lot of information to parse through and come away with some intelligent, insight or questions about, so that you can get answers that are meaningful to the community.
Absolutely.
So let me just kind of interject once again as a kind of an outsider. I remember we were doing shows on kind of a variety of things, because we've really tried to make the show one which, while it is reaching out specifically to seniors, and I think that, the kudos to Westboro Cable, because they do a great job as a result of this show in some ways, or as a result of the other things they do, of keeping seniors who may not have a lot of high-tech skills easily informed and about and involved in the community. But so we're doing a number of, and I knew that Westboro was doing a number of different things, and we had the Matt Prison from the master plan on, and we had a number of folks, and then came COVID, bang, and it was literally like somebody, turned off a switch. I kind of described that I feel like we were all going along, and all of a sudden the switch went off, and everybody's like, oh my God, it's dark. And then all of a sudden, like a week ago, the switch went back on. It was supposed to be this gradual thing, but then all of a sudden, boom, So in this, now you've been elected, and everybody now knows what you look like. And so what are you thinking? From your own perspective? I know that you obviously need to be, you're not inevitably going to say, oh, I have a lot to learn and blah, blah, blah. And I get that. But what are you thinking going forward? You're one of those people who's obviously been paying attention. So what things do you think, say, over the next year are going to be really important things, or over the next couple of years,
Sure. So I came into the position, it was a long consideration. Do I go for the 3-year term, or do I go for the 1-year term? And I really decided to go with the 1-year term, because I know it's a very large commitment. I obviously have my own personal commitments as well. So it was really an opportunity for me, if elected, to get involved, try to make that positive change to the community. And as such, I really look at the opportunities that I'm looking at in a 1-year term aren't super grandiose, but they're nonetheless very meaningful to the town. So a great example of that, a couple of things that, that I think about. And one in particular, I'll say, is an overall theme to how I think of my position. And that is one of fostering respect and equity across our town, and all the things that we do, whether it be policy, whether it be votes on particular issues that we're dealing with. So that's a really key theme to, just my style of how I'm going to operate. But on the board at our retreat back in March, I took the goal of going through all of the town policies, this board town policies. So specifically right now, I'm going through around a dozen to 20 different policies, working with the town manager and others as appropriate, to start to rebuild those. And we are actually planning on bringing a number of those policies to the next board meeting, specifically our flag policy, because we've had some requests on hoisting flags in town, as well as the rotary signs. And then another one that is particularly of something that I'm interested to me is the vehicle purchasing policy. If you're not aware, the topic came up a month or so ago around hybrid vehicles and the requirement for us to comply to the Green Communities Act. So that's something that is, that's really something that I'm interested in and working on. And that dovetails into Sustainable Westboro, which is another board that I am participating on, and we're working on reconstructing that board right now. Pete Dembeck has been leading an effort between the CAP and Sustainable Westboro. Those are being merged, and he has actually just reached out to the community to ask for volunteers and for people who want to serve on the 9-person board for sustainability. So I encourage anybody who has interest in solar, electric, whatever it may be in the sustainability realm, please get involved. We need help in that space, and there's a lot of great work to be done there and some exciting technology to get involved with. And then finally, knowing that this is to the senior, the primary audience for this is for the senior community, I am also the liaison to the Council on Aging. And I met with Alma DeMarche down at the Senior Center a couple of weeks ago and learned about all the great things that have been going on. And to your point about coming out of COVID, she had mentioned to me that several of the seniors had recently been able to get together for a knitting session, and it was just a breath of fresh air to them to be able to get back out and get together, and it's great news. And I'm really looking forward to getting involved with that, especially since I have a history of working at the Willows, and my wife was a 23-year employee at the Willows. So I really do enjoy working with the senior community.
And I guess one interesting thing that Shelby, and then I'll stop because, as you know, I'm supposed to be watching you grill him. But one interesting thing that occurred to me as he was describing that is that it's relatively rare to have somebody coming into one of these positions who has such a strong background in simply organization and and structures, as opposed to people like me, who have, what I think are great ideas, but but being able to actually figure out how, small to medium to large bureaucratic structures can cause those things to happen is just a huge challenge. And the notion of having somebody who is actually interested, I shouldn't say actually, that sounds who is interested in the ways in which those things can really be done well is really a terrific asset.
Yeah, and it's definitely something, coming from the private sector, I was running fairly large teams, global teams on projects, and had a lot of discretion on how we operated as a team, right? That's very different than how we function as a town. We as a board are an executive branch. We oversee the town manager, and we expect that the town manager is driving the operations of the town. So that's an interesting dynamic for me, and I've been working through that. So that's one of those areas I'll just share with the community, is that's been a learning curve for me. And having not served on a board before, a public board before, this was definitely a little bit of a challenge for me to work through. But I will say that I have established and will continue to establish great relationships across the town manager's offices, as well as the rest of the board and the other boards in the town.
Shelby?
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the most challenging aspects that I've found, and that is, I think anyone who runs for this type of office, we want to sort of innately problem solvers, right? We want to be solving the problem, and probably a little bit type A mixed in there too, right? So it's a challenge to kind of build a coalition, if you will, to get the okay, if you will, get the support of the board to move forward, or to work. Not that the working with the town manager is difficult in the office. It's just it's a very interesting dynamic. I'm having difficulty explaining it, but it's you're sort of like, here's my idea, and you sort of run with it, and then we have, Patrick, I know you do. I have constant exchanges with our town manager and other department heads as appropriate. But it is this very sort of hands-off. I mean, we are a board, we're not town employees. And sometimes I have to wake myself up, and I've had a little bit of hand slapping too in 4 years, where it's like, it's not your role, but you learn, and hopefully we don't make the same mistake twice. So
yeah, and I'll just point out, I think just for the record here, our town manager is fantastic to work with. Her office has been a pleasure to work with. So very responsive to my questions, even though sometimes they might seem very fundamental. She's been a pleasure to work with. So it's yeah, well, just say it's an interesting dynamic, but I encourage people to get involved. It stretches my skill set, right? It stretches my comfort level, right? And that to me is a good challenge. And there was a discussion at last night's board meeting about a particular vote, and I came into this saying that there is a good chance that every vote I take, 50% of the town could not be happy with me, right? So I just came into that with that approach. I've had a number of different family members over the years who have been either on the select board or on the school committee over the last 50, 60 years in town, and got a lot of, for those that are still around, I've gotten advice from them. So it's exciting. I'll just say that, and I would encourage anybody to get involved.
So Patrick, what do you think, top 2 to 3 challenges that Westboro faces? Whether it's before the board, I'm just saying across the board, what are the challenges that we are looking at? And I'm not asking for a solution, just what are the challenges?
Sure. I said this when I was running for the office, and I think it still holds true now, is coming out of COVID. It's great that the switches, as Arthur said earlier, got flipped. And I'm hopeful that we all stay healthy and whatnot. Obviously, there's a lot of variables there. So the health side of it is certainly a concern. I'm a little anxious over this fall as to, kids start returning back to school and the weather changes and all of those things. So, but I am encouraged by the way that the town has handled the last year or so in our response to COVID. But the other side of that dynamic on COVID is really around the businesses in town. And, we know that there's a pretty big shift in the way the tax base has been set in town over the last few years as a result of businesses and homeowners and whatnot. And I am worried about office space. I am worried about businesses in town surviving. And I'm hopeful that we as a town, through the EDC and other capabilities, that we can provide some relief there. Certainly the various different grants and acts that the federal and state governments are providing us with money. We need to use those things wisely, and I'm excited about the opportunity to be involved in those discussions. And I'm also encouraged with the fact that, sitting on the last 5 or 6 board meetings, we have had a number of different business opportunities that have presented themselves to the town. So it's great to see large and small businesses. I memean, Westboro Pizza under new ownership, that was great news. There's just some great things happening in town, whether it be the potential of the hospital up on 495 and Route 9, or whether it's the new building at 4400. These are unbelievable. It's, there are a lot of towns out there that I suspect are struggling a little more than we are. So it's good that we are in a position we are, and that really, I think, is a testament to the professionalism of the town and how we prepared ourselves.
I think the other thing that, and I know we shared this view because we've talked about it, is, and you mentioned it, is one of what you bring to your position is equity, diversification, inclusion. I think that's certainly every board, I don't care where you are in the United States, is somehow the work that a board is doing involves that, whether it's access to services or equity in services and delivery of service models. So I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm sure you certainly agree there. Yeah,
absolutely. And just for folks that don't know me, just a little bit more of my background, so I give you why I have the perspective on equity that I do. So being an Army brat, I lived all around the world. I moved about every 2.5 years or so. And predominantly before I moved to Westboro, I was a minority in every place I lived. And particularly in the South, my school, I think, was 60% Black, maybe 40% white. I moved to Westboro in '83, and there might have been 2 or 3 Black students in the entire school. So very different now. Watched the senior parade the other day, was down there in front of the library. And, it was fantastic, first of all, to see all the smiles and all the, encouragement of the community for, cheering on our seniors, but also really encouraging to see that diversity in our community. I work in a business where Dell is an extremely diverse company, and there's just a ton of respect all around the company for no matter who it is, right? So I hope to exude that through our community, and I do know, one of the challenges I think of our minority communities is perhaps the feeling of not being able to get involved, or not being as receptive as perhaps a majority, right? We need to make people in our community, regardless of their race, creed, color, whatever it is, accepted in our community. So I'm a big supporter of that. And in every effort, I even mentioned it the other night, last night at the board meeting, we need to, at every opportunity, make sure that we provide services that are equitable and meaningful to the entire community.
And once again, I think that you bring a real perspective to that because of your knowledge of systems. I will say, so I do these shows in all the communities where I do quite a bit of elder law. And so we just interviewed in Nantucket the newly hired diversity and inclusion officer for the community, who's trying to, once again, trying to do what you're just doing, what you're really doing. Now, at the end of these shows, Patrick, what I try to do is always leave a couple of minutes for Shelby to talk to the folks out there about what is going on kind of in the near term over the next couple of weeks, especially from the selectmen's perspective. But now I got two selectmen, so I realize I have to budget a little more time for this. So could the two of you kind of give folks just a sense kind of what's happening over the next few weeks?
Yeah, so I think, as Patrick mentioned, importantly, I mean, people might yawn when they hear policies, but policies really shape, how people do business, how they live their lives, how they interact with the town, how they interact with businesses. So the board will be hearing from Patrick and the town manager as to some policy changes and recommendations. We continue to Christy, actually, our town manager, and I are working on bringing forward guest speakers to talk about alternatives for mosquito spraying that are a little more ecologically friendly. So we don't have those speakers lined up, but anticipate that will be part of certainly a board meeting. And I would, Patrick, I don't know if you have anything to add. I do want to just, Arthur, talk about some upcoming shows. But Patrick, anything else off the top of your head that will be coming forward?
No, cover the policies and sustainability, and the move to get that into a more formal sustainability committee. That's really important. That's a very aggressive schedule over the next couple of weeks to form that committee. So I'll just repeat it again. Please do reach out to Pete Dumbeck or the town manager's office through Seal a Door, and get involved.
So as Arthur, you wrap up the show, and our friend Aiden behind the scenes does so, we'll post the contact information if folks have any ideas for shows. Would love to hear them. Where we want the show to be meaningful to everyone out there. Well, Arthur and I are going to kind of figure out the summer schedule. We are going to be working through the summer, bringing you new content, and we've got a number of great guest speakers that are scheduled to come on. We will have Sean Keogh, who is another new selectman, on at a future meeting over the summer. So it'll be interesting to hear from him. There's a new little free pantry that is opened up to offer non-perishable goods and other kind of healthcare supplies to folks. So we're going to have the organizers of that on. And actually our friend Alma Demonch will be on as well to talk about what's going on as the senior center is opening. And I know for one, my mother-in-law is so excited. I mean, she practically skipped out the door today and she doesn't skip very well, love her as I do, but she practically skipped out.
A lot of Frank and Mary's here,
Yeah, no, she did to go to lunch and to be with her friends. So it's so nice to see that switch flipped. So Arthur, I'll turn it back to you.
So thank you so much to the both of you. Patrick, I think it's great that you ran, it'll be, I think you can, both for you and the town to have this experience during this year and see if at the end of that year, you're like, oh, this was terrible. Or, versus, well, this was pretty interesting, maybe I should do this. So it's not often that you get to actually, get a test run at one of these, right? As opposed to having 3 years and then the last 2 of them, you're like going, oh my God. So that's really exciting. Thank you so much for coming on. Shelby, this is always wonderful. We really enjoy this. And folks, this is exactly the reason why this show is here, so that you can have a clear sense of who these people are, in a context which isn't open meeting controlled, and we don't have to do all the procedural. So I hope that you enjoy this, and I really appreciate Shelby's efforts to really get a variety of folks on so that you can get a sense of the groups you want to be involved in. I think Patrick's point is well taken. This is a very involved community. People are really involved here, and that's the reason why the community works. So to get a sense of who these people are, what the organizations are, what you want to know, and why you want to be involved is terrific. So anyway, thank you very much to Shelby. Thank you, Patrick. And folks, we'll look forward to seeing you on the next installment of Frank and Mary here in Westboro. Thank you very much.